everybody on the ABC 15 Facebook page. Thank you so much for joining us once again as we talk about education, what's going on. We know there are so many questions still surrounding reopening schools. My colleague Carla Navarrete and I are here, and we will continue to be here throughout most of the rest of the week, today, tomorrow, and Friday. We welcome your comments, your questions, anything you want to know. We are happy to do our best to answer those questions. But really, we're just hoping to have a discussion about these issues. I'm a mom. My kiddos aren't quite school age yet. But Carla, you have 3 kiddos. And so you are navigating this situation along with everything else. And you and I have talked about the importance of discussing the issues, but also doing so respectfully. So we want to make sure we lay that out as we get going here, Carla, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Danielle, thanks for this awesome opportunity. We are 2 working moms that are in the trenches, right? And so we welcome your feedback, your comments. We've done a lot of research over the last 24 hours and beyond that to bring you the very latest. I know this morning there's a lot happening at the state capitol. There's a lot happening this evening. And I know, Danielle, you've been on top of that. So what have you seen from the state capitol this morning?
Yeah, so this morning at 9 a.m., we had several educators, medical professionals were out there in the Rose Garden, pretty much the same group, several of the same key players that we saw at the beginning of last week. And essentially, their message is, it is downright dangerous, that's a quote from them, to even be considering going back to school or reopening schools, I should say, in person right now. And so they had several speakers. They are pushing for that guidance that the state health department is supposed to be out with by August 7th. That's supposed to help guide districts as they decide for themselves when it's safe to reopen. But there's a lot of frustration in that group. They feel like the governor's been dragging his feet. They feel like they should have had those benchmarks sooner, and that we are just not in a place to safely reopen schools. They say it will be putting students and teachers at risk if we do that anytime soon. They also say that parents and families need stability. And so one of the speakers, I believe her child is in possibly Phoenix Union or one of the districts that has said, we're just going to go remote learning through fall break just so that we can plan and have consistency. So they praise decisions like that. But really, they're pushing for that guidance. And a lot of that guidance stems around kind of three areas in regards to this coronavirus pandemic, right? And we've seen these 3 elements popping up in other letters to the governor from other organizations as well. And so while we wait for those benchmarks from the health department, which are due out August 7th, I think we're getting a good sense it will probably be related to a downward trajectory in cases for a certain amount of days. A decrease in the percent positivity for a certain amount of days. And then also what's referred to as kind of robust testing and the ability to test people quick. They also are advocating for free testing for educators and anyone who is possibly exposed to the virus once schools reopen, and the ability to get those test results back quickly. Because, Carla, you have been covering so many of these drive-through testing blitzes. And I know you've even gotten tested yourself. And sometimes these results can take weeks. And, I get the argument that if test results are taking weeks, how do you know what to do to try to contain the spread in a place like a classroom or a school, right?
Yeah, and I know that Sonora Quest recently came out and said that they were backlogged about 60,000 tests, and now they're down to 42,000. So they've caught up a good 20,000 thus far, but there's 42,000 tests that are out there that haven't been, processed. I know I did the self-testing site a few weeks ago, and it took exactly 12 days for me to get my results. And I just thought, wow, this is somebody who's really waiting these results, and they're having to wait 12 days, and they are a grocery store worker or an essential worker. What have I done in those 12 days? I took the test because I'm around a lot of people. As journalists that we are, we just come in contact with folks. I don't think I was exposed per se, but I have been in contact with a lot of people. And so I thought, well, what if I'm an asymptomatic carrier? So that was the reasoning behind that. And it was really disheartening just to see that. I would check my email constantly and there were no results. So we definitely need to not only push for tests, but that those results are a little bit more immediate. The saliva test ASU is doing, I think they're on their 4th testing site already. This would be their 3rd Saturday if they do this one this Saturday. Those results come back within 24 to 30 hours. My friend did that and she texted me the very next day after she tested. So we just know that that's another situation, another route to go. And it's a very different type of test. So I don't want to get too far away into the testing, but it's important when that testing that you're doing and you're doing so heavily isn't giving you the results, the immediate results that you need.
Right. And I know that that ties into the question of, what are schools supposed to do if and when someone on campus tests positive for COVID-19? How do you shut down that class or do you shut down the whole school, and kind of those questions? And I know that's something that the Department of Ed has said they are working with the state health department on as well. But they've been saying that for a couple weeks now. And so we're trying to push to get these metrics and to get these contingency plans out so that districts have more information as they're trying to decide what is best for their district and their community. I wanted to pull up a letter here. Again, I'm going to attempt a screen share here. Still navigating this technology and everything. But last week, we saw something similar to what we saw at the Capitol this morning. This is from the Arizona School Boards Association. They represent more than 240 districts and education organizations here in the state. And they put out a letter asking for certain criteria for reopening. And they have it listed right there, kind of in the middle. They say we need to be in phase 2, and that's based on the White House guidelines for opening up America again. And they say that new cases need to have a downward trajectory of documented cases for at least 28 days, a decrease in percentage of positive COVID-19 tests for at least 28 days while maintaining a flat or increasing test volume. And then that robust testing that we were talking about, and Carla touching on the importance of that. Percent positive cases are less than or equal to 15% for at least 14 consecutive days, and median time to obtain test results in less than or equal to 3 days. That also is similar to the letter that Kathy Hoffman sent out just 1 day later. So let's see if I can pull that one up here for us. But basically trying to put into context that what we're seeing today at the Capitol is kind of a continuation of what we have been seeing for several weeks now. This was the letter that Superintendent Kathy Hoffman sent out on July 21st. And again, you see right there in the center, calling for public health data to determine reopening metrics. And so she mentions there that downward trajectory, the decrease in positivity rates, and the widespread availability of testing with timely results. And so that is the type of information, the types of benchmarks that we expect to see from the health department once they do release those. I have been talking with Superintendent Hoffman's office, and they say they do expect those benchmarks to be out before August 7th. But again, August 7th is at the end of next week, and we've got more than 24 school districts starting their remote learning on Monday. So this is all kind of happening at the same time, and I can understand that frustration of people wanting to plan, wanting to have consistency, and wanting to know a direction at least. Something else, Carla, that we have to mention as well is we have that press conference at the Capitol this morning, but tonight there's going to be a rally with parents who are on the other side of that debate and saying they want schools to reopen, and not necessarily that it's a blanket reopen for everybody, but that they want the choice to send their kids to school, that they think there should be an online option for families who don't feel comfortable, but they want the choice to send their kids to school. And Carla, you brought up a great idea earlier about putting this into context and kind of how our state is unique in the way that we operate.
So when you think of our state, and I've been living in Arizona, this is now coming up on my 22nd year, 20 years in the Valley reporting, and Choice is a very big part of who we are as Arizonans, okay? And so also the individuality. This is a fact of Arizona. It's very much I get to pick as an individual what I want to do. And that, I'm not saying whether I'm for or against that. I'm just saying I'm giving you a little bit of perspective as to our state. We know that charter schools have been here for at least 20 years. We're one of those key states that other states look at when it comes to creating charter school systems. We're one of the earliest states to have legislature for that mechanism to exist. And so when you think of what's happening right now with the pandemic, in order for us to all of a sudden, or for our state leadership to suddenly say we're going to shut school down, it just doesn't really fit with the way that Arizona has been historically when it comes to schools. Now, whether or not we agree on that, that's a whole other story. But I'm just trying to give you some of that notion of some of that sense that so many parents in the state are used to, that you can't pick and choose. I will be honest, down my block, I have kids that are my kids' friends that are not necessarily at our school. I think I can count 1, 2, 3 different schools, and they're all within that same age range. So we don't live in a state where everybody goes to their local elementary school. There's, I can think of so many schools, Bases and ALA and, our local Chandler schools, and then our private schools. I mean, the choices are ginormous, right? When it comes to picking the right place. And so I think right now in these times, it's important for us to keep that in mind, that we got to think about our individual situation with our children and what level of exposure our kids can or cannot have based on our kids' health, right? I was mentioning yesterday that I've got a child who's immune compromised. For me personally, our choice is online. There's no way I would do any other way. But that's not to say that my neighbor across the street is not going to be able to send her kids to school, and they're in a totally different predicament. At this point, I think it's respecting what each other is doing and doing what's best for your family, getting to know your teacher, getting to know your principal. I have a direct line to them so that if there's anything that goes wrong with online, I know I can connect right away and get things fixed for my kids once school starts on the 17th.
Yeah. And I think we touched on this yesterday too, the importance of advocating for what your child needs to make the best of remote learning. I think you mentioned, asking for books and, doing things to kind of set your child up for success the best way you can, given this unprecedented situation, and the importance of still doing that.
Right. And, I see a parent here, Danielle, she asked about, if we're both essential workers and we can't afford electronics. I will be honest, I couldn't afford 3 computers in the spring when all of a sudden we had to go to online. I called the school and I said, my daughter says that there's a Chromebook that she uses, and it said, yep, come up. So we were able to finagle that and maneuver that. I know that I was at Apache Junction this morning. They have a smaller district. I will say there are only 3,200 students in that district, but they're giving a laptop to every single one of their students. And plus, the thing with that is they're able to control what the kids can get online. So they have all their books online. They have all the materials that they need. And so far, kudos to Apache Junction. Again, I know they're smaller, but they really working on this back in April, as far as ordering all of that equipment and getting all that curriculum online. So there isn't that issue of, well, I have a computer at home. We're also giving away hotspots for those families that have internet problems. It's not to say that they're perfect and that they don't have any issues. They had issues, but they prepared themselves. And so they've got people at the district that are routinely working on getting all of those that are having issues logging on, boom, that kiddo back online as soon as possible. So kudos to them. That they're doing all that they can to get things, to get the ball rolling. They're on week 2. This is their official week 2 of school. And so far, when she goes, these guys are troopers. They're true adapters. Kids are so resilient, right? Our kids are able to really maneuver themselves and adjust in such a way that, I'm not saying it's perfect, but they're going to have to learn to deal with what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'm talking about my kiddo, the one you just saw right back there.
Yeah, no, it's It's tough, and when it comes to accessibility, also, we're gonna do more on that tomorrow night. We have a whole story on the digital divide and the fact that hundreds of thousands of kids in our state still don't have access to technology or the internet, and that makes remote learning really difficult for them. So after this, I'm actually going to head downtown. I'm going to go meet up with Chicanos por la Causa at their community center, and we are going to be speaking with them about the work they're doing in their community to make sure that families have those devices, that they have internet access, and we'll also be speaking with a family about some of the challenges remote learning is causing for them and in their households. And so that's something that we have to remember as well, because with everybody starting with remote learning, it's going to put some kids at a disadvantage. And, even Superintendent Hoffman has been very open about that, of saying we are trying to get to every child as best we can, but that it's just not possible to reach every single student to make sure that they have that optimal remote learning experience. And so I know the districts are doing what they can to make it work, whether that's giving out devices, giving out hotspots. And a lot of times you can give them a device, but then, Carla, you mentioned internet access. If they don't have a space to work, or if they don't have access to the internet, that device doesn't really do them a lot of good. So it's kind of a twofold on that digital component of getting them the devices, but then also making sure that they have access. And so that's something that I think is going to continue as long as kids are primarily remote learning. So that's going to be an ongoing issue for sure. And the effects of that, I think, remain to be seen. We probably won't really know as far as the potential learning loss or, some of those side effects of these closures and the extended remote learning for a while.
And, speaking of the long-term effects, Danielle, Kristen Rice has made two comments about the resiliency that I spoke about earlier, and then also about kids who, sadly, we have to, talk about this because I did a story specifically on this, and mandated reporters of child abuse. We know that our teachers are those eyes in the classroom. My sister is a first grade teacher in New Mexico. She's shared with me about how she has had to call, Child Protective Services on kids, and without the kids being in the classroom, those eyes are not there to catch all of the signs that kids show. But and mental health, Kristen, you also talk about the mental health in our children. Believe me, I've covered a lot of suicide stories last year, especially in East Valley. And so honestly, as tired as I am from working my shift, I will make a point. I told my daughter this summer, I said, I make it a point to do one outdoor activity with you a day. And I know it's 115 degrees. Sometimes it's 10, 15 minutes of our time, but I am not willing to put their health, their mental health at second order or at second best in order to not take care of that. I want to not take care of that mental health aspect. So I'm listening to you. I hear you. And I always tell my kids, this too shall pass. We are not going to be in this situation forever. And so the more I can let them know that this isn't a lifetime that we're doing this, we're going to do distance learning, hopefully for this quarter or this semester. And then hopefully the prospect of a vaccine coming through.
Yeah. Well, and even, you touched on the concerns regarding children who may not be in the best home situations. Also, kids with special needs. Jen Schaefer, about 5 or 6 minutes ago, wrote in, for special needs kids who can't use Zoom or a computer, their anger and frustration they feel is getting worse at home, daily meltdowns. This is really hard to deal with. And Jen, I have heard that from several parents of kiddos with special needs. And I think just last week we spoke with a family. She has 4 kids. 2 of her boys are special needs. One has autism. One is blind with palsy. And she is at a loss. I mean, she basically said, I don't know what to do. And so we are trying to get more clarification on that in-person support services requirement that was laid out in the governor's executive order last week, where they basically said, hey, come August 17th, you need to have a space open or you need to partner with someone, Boys and Girls Club, a community organization, something where kids who are, they said, at risk, they mentioned kids with special needs, but basically said where they can go to get the support they need. Now, who exactly qualifies for that? What type of support are we talking about? Is this supervised remote learning, or is this, for kids with special needs, are they actually going to be engaged in live kind of tactile in-person teaching? So again, confusion surrounding that. And I'm scheduled to talk with Superintendent Hoffman tomorrow. In fact, they just texted me confirming that. And so that is something that we are going to ask for sure, is we need some clarification on that in-person support that's required for August 17th. But Carla, I know you speak with a lot of parents on a regular basis, and I feel like the special needs, parents with kiddos with special needs especially feel frustrated and quite honest. I've had a couple say they just feel forgotten right now, which is a really unfortunate.
Yeah, and I guess we can speak on I know Danielle, you and I were kind of touching on it on the Empowerment Scholarship application. I don't know if any of you know about that, but that is a very good source. And I know that the deadline has expired back in May for the first quarter. The next deadline is upcoming. And so I can tell you that is out there, and that allows you, again, with the whole independence of the way we roll out our educational system, it gives you, the parent, the control to hire, occupational therapists, speech therapists, any of those key components for especially a child with autism. I will tell you, I not only have a daughter who has Guillain-Barré, but my son is also on the spectrum. And so anyway, sharing a little bit, but I want to put it out there because we've really just, looked for as much help as possible. My son's occupational therapy is done via Zoom. And in fact, she was just telling me this week that she just got a job at Phoenix Children. And I said, oh, wait. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to. How can we keep services going? She's so good. She bonds with us well. So definitely for you parents out there who have children with special needs, that is one avenue that you can take, not maybe this first quarter, but definitely for the latter part of the year.
And I do believe that next deadline is coming up sometime in August for that, for the second quarter. I believe, I forgive me, I don't know the exact deadline, but I know it's coming up here in the next few weeks or so.
So what I'll do, I'll send in that link so that if parents want to see, another parent had posted it earlier, but we will put that up on our screen for you so that if you want to look into everything is on there. Once you click on their link, it's pretty easy to maneuver through it. So
yeah, great. And I'm looking at all the comments that we have coming through. Thank you so much to everybody for chiming in on this conversation, for giving your thoughts, for asking your questions. We truly appreciate it. This is one thing I think we're also seeing, and Carla, you mentioned this a little bit yesterday. Cheeto, Montana saying, parents, we just need to prepare ourselves for homeschooling because we will not be safe for a long time until they make the vaccine for us all. So said that just about a minute ago or so. And I think we are seeing more parents starting to at least look into some of these other options. I have a friend, she has four kids, 3 girls and a little baby boy. And she is going to venture into homeschooling for the first time because they wanted consistency. They wanted a plan. They were kind of sick of waiting to figure out what was going to happen. And they were really nervous about some of the, potential health risks of going into a classroom. I know microschooling is something that is popping up more and more, where essentially you have, kind of one teacher or one guide. I know the Prenda program calls them guides, with, a really small group, a handful of kids, and doing that live instruction that way, either at their home or in some sort of a public space. And also online schooling. I actually, in my story tonight, we're talking about ways to set your family up for remote learning success. What does back to school look like this year? What sorts of things should you be thinking about to make this process as successful and as smooth of a transition for your family as possible? And so I spoke with the principal of Arizona Connections Academy. They're a K through 12 online school. They've been in the Valley more than a decade, about 13 or 14 years. And they have seen a dramatic spike in initial enrollment. She said that usually at this time in previous years, they've been at about 1,800, 1,900 enrollment. She said right now they're pushing they expect to push 2,700, and they have an enrollment cap of 3,500. And she said they expect to hit that this year, and that on a lot of the registration documents that parents are filling out when it comes to the reason that they're looking into online schooling, that some are listing, I don't feel my child is safe at school. And I'm sure if we checked with K-12, ASU Prep, some of the other big online schoolers here in the Valley, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a similar trend as parents start to at least investigate some of these other schooling options.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I spoke with Sue. She was from Buckeye. She's from Buckeye. She is a former special ed teacher, and she's been microschooling for a while. She's actually taking kids into her home now. She was schooling just her kids, but now that we're in this situation, she's opening it up to people in her community. And one thing that is important to mention when it comes to microschooling, I think, Danielle, I heard from several people, is having that same kind of group of parents that have the same values that you have, as far as how much exposure are you willing to put yourself out to? Are you going out to see a lot of family? Are your kids home are pretty much at home? And making sure that everybody in that micro school setting, all those 10 kids or however many kids are there, that they are kind of holding that same standard of care for themselves. So when they come into the group home and do the schooling, they don't bring anything with them, or they minimize that exposure. Because I think at this point we're living in this of how much am I willing to risk, right? How much am I willing to go out to? My daughters are having a play date with a friend today, and I've gone through, and they haven't had one in a very long time. Speaking of mental health, they need that socialization. Mom and I went through, okay, we've been staying home. We were in Texas, but it's been 2 weeks since we got back, and we haven't gone out anywhere. And so, and we know that I've been testing myself, and so I know where I stand, and I'm the essential worker in this household. So it's really asking those tough questions of those who you are around, like, how much are you putting yourself out there? How much are you willing to do? Because what you may be willing to do is something that I may not be willing to do. Mm-hmm. And so we gotta with those that are on that same level in order for us to stay safe, in my opinion. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree with you. I think they're calling them like pandemic pods. Like, who are you kind of letting into your quarantine bubble? And yeah, and kind of, knowing where they've been, how they operate, what they're comfortable with, what they're not, and kind of aligning yourself with that. I want to make sure that we also include Mercedes Fields here about 2 minutes ago. She said, we're doing kids such a disservice. She said her son's been going to the Boys and Girls Club for 3 months. She says they've managed to control everything just fine. She says they're not looking for babysitters. We're looking for educators. She's occupied with work the entire day, and he needs to be in class. And I think that's a sentiment shared by a lot of parents who want that choice, who want the ability to send their kids to school if they are comfortable with it. Not necessarily saying that everybody should, but that they want the option to do that. And I know there's been a lot of talk of, child cares and preschools have remained open this whole time. And so far things seem to be going okay. But I think the big concern over schools is you're talking in some cases 3,500 students to a campus, classrooms that have 30 to 35 students in it. And just the pure size of some of the schools, I think, is what creates that extra level of concern and that extra challenge really of, I've had teachers posting pictures. If I socially distance my classroom, I'm going to need 4 classrooms to, fit everybody in. And so those are some of the differences, I think, when we're talking about preschools and daycares versus some schools and school districts, especially when you're talking districts like Mesa, Peoria, some of these really large school districts that are already overcrowded in their high schools and on some of their campuses.
Yeah, I mean, I think of Hamilton just down the street, and it's got like at least 3,500 students that attend the school. So you're not talking a small group in a daycare. You're talking, that such a big weave of students, right? And all we know from the CDC report, from the statistics, that it takes one person, one asymptomatic carrier to come in and spread that in order for it to become a big wildfire type of situation. My sister is a contact tracer in New Mexico, and she was just anecdotally mentioning to me that they had 2 girls at a party that she was investigating, and they were able to spread it. They did the contact tracing. This is maybe a month and a half ago. They were still doing, they were doing contact tracing in New Mexico, and they were able to figure out that there were 73 people that were potentially exposed. So you talk 2 people that came to a party, and they're all young adults, which is the other point that I think we need to really hit hard, and that is, and Governor Ducey put out that PSA about tough on COVID. I really think the message needs to go out to the younger population, that 18 to 24-year-old, that you may be able to do just fine and be asymptomatic, but then the person right next to you, their grandmother may not be that fortunate, that is able to battle this thing with no problem. So if your parents out there and you've got those high schoolers, I mean, please send that message out to them, because they are the ones that are out and about. I feel a little bit more freely because they're younger.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, definitely. And I think we saw that in what was happening in Old Town and some of the nightclubs when those were allowed to be open, kind of those large crowds and not appearing anyway to be social distancing. I wasn't there. I wasn't inside. It's been a long time since I've been to a nightclub in Old Town. But, mom life, that's okay. But, I think that's what we saw with that age group. I also think, Carla, what can be really confusing and conflicting for parents, and we're seeing some of these in the comments. I think Deborah Greenfield Hartman, she weighed in a couple minutes ago, and I think she encapsulates this perfectly. She says, this is a horrible dilemma. I think most parents want their children to go to school, but what is the price everyone will pay? Nobody knows yet. And I think that's a situation that a lot of parents are in, and it doesn't help when you have kind of conflicting expert advice as well. You have medical professionals down at the Capitol today saying it is not safe to go back to school. Absolutely not. You're putting kids and teachers and their families' lives at risk. But then on the other side, you have the American Academy of Pediatrics basically saying the data that they have shows that kids are less likely. When I say kids, I know they classify them 20 and under, but I believe in the American Academy of Pediatrics recent guidance, they said that kids 10 and under, especially, that there's very little evidence that if they get it, that they react very poorly to it and that they spread it, kind of saying that, and again, this is the American Academy of Pediatrics, saying that kids are not the super spreaders of COVID like they are of, say, the flu or some of the other illnesses. And so they're pushing for kids to be back in person, saying the risk mentally, socially, developmentally of them not being in school outweighs the risk of coronavirus. Now, we have to keep in mind with a group like the American Academy of Pediatrics, they are advocating for kids, right? They're advocating for what they think is best for kids. Then you think about, okay, well, even if the kids aren't going to get it, or they may not spread it as bad, what about teachers? Teacher to teacher transmission. And so then you're dealing with a different population. And there's just all these different facts coming at you, studies coming at you, guidance coming at you as a parent. It's hard to know what to believe sometimes. And I think that's been a really unfortunate part of this schooling divide is you kind of have people on both sides. You have experts on both sides. You have political parties on both sides. And parents and families are stuck right in the middle. At the end of the day, making the decision that impacts their family. And I think that's what makes education right now just such a huge, all-encompassing issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw somebody, Judy and Seth Shavine, I believe is their last name. Many school-age minors reside in multi-generational households. This must be addressed. Absolutely, Judy. I think when I did all those COVID testing sites over the last couple of weekends, just about every car that I went to and spoke with someone, of course, I was wearing my mask and social distancing. They mentioned that somebody at home I had one mom who said that her in-laws lived with her and her kids. And then I had another mom I remember very clearly that had her aunt living with her because she has the early onset of dementia. And so I'm not in that situation myself, but I can only imagine just how much worry parents carry in knowing that there's that elderly person at home helping. Sometimes those elderly folks are the ones that are helping care for our children. I know I mentioned my sister is a teacher, and my mom is my sister's babysitter. And my sister has had to make that hard decision of saying, there's no way I can have my mom keep watching the kids and picking them up from school because my mom has diabetes, and diabetes is one of illnesses and symptoms that are pre-existing that really put her at high risk. I'll be honest with you, I had my mom since Christmas. My mom lives out of state in New Mexico, and I won't go because I worry so much that I could be an asymptomatic carrier and bring that to her. And I tell her I could never live with my me. So I'm biting the bullet and saying, I will go visit you when I know it's safe to visit you. As hard as that is.
Yeah. And that goes to setting those boundaries and making those decisions that are best for your family and your individual situation. One thing, I know we have just a few more minutes here, but one thing I wanted to pick up on here, Ashley Pilman, I apologize if I said your last name wrong, about 2 minutes ago, posting, why are schools daycares? If it's not safe for teachers, why is it okay for support staff and students to have Explore and other programs open on campus? So Explore is the program in the Mesa Public School District. $164 a week. You can bring your kid there and they will supervise in their remote learning and basically provide them a safe space to go while parents work. And so I have noticed this on a lot of the chat groups and some of the parent groups of why is it okay for schools to offer this type of in-person support, but you can't have classrooms. I know Gilbert is registering for their program right now. And even over the summer, we got an inside look at Peoria Unified summer camp program that they did, where you have, kids there from early in the morning till late afternoon, early evening. They're doing activities while their parents are at work. And I think from what I'm seeing so far is that difference of we're talking about smaller sizes. So you're not accommodating all of the students on a school campus. In Peoria, they only had 9 kids to a classroom. They all wore masks. They had all the desks, facing forward so that they weren't interacting too much face to face. They had cleaning protocols in place, and they were taking all of these steps. So it's, again, I can't speak from this is just what I'm gathering from what I'm hearing from the districts as far as these programs. This is where we see them trying to balance the health and safety of students, teachers, and staff by keeping school buildings closed, but also understanding that there are students out there that need a place to go and that need a safe place to go. And so this is where they're trying to serve and meet that need, is by offering these camps and programs. So that's still something that I think we can look into a little more of, what exactly goes into these Explore and other programs. How many students are they accepting? What do those social distancing measures look like? So Ashley, I think that's a good point, and one that we will make sure to follow up on. But I think, again, that's where we see this kind of battle of trying to protect health and safety, but also knowing that there are many families in the community who rely on school for so much more than just academics. And so I know we got to wrap up here in the next minute or two. So Carla, any last thoughts or anything else that you want to touch on before we sign off for the day?
Yeah, just one quick thing. I know Donna had mentioned it like really early on at like 10:02, so we probably won't be able to pull up her comment. But Donna, I'm looking into the mask situation. She had asked if they're going to be required, and so I mentioned this yesterday, Danielle, that their school, a charter school that has been, or a parent told me that the charter school where she's sending her kids is telling her that a mask's optional, so you can wear one if you want, or you cannot if you don't want to. I'm still looking into that, and it's become a little bit of a struggle. So I've got that interview with that mom. I'm in the trenches trying to figure that out, and we hope to bring you some of that tomorrow. That's hopefully going to be a story for tomorrow morning. If I do get an answer from either the state of the public instruction, Kathy Hoffman's office, or maybe the county, or maybe even the school. So I'm not sure exactly where we're at with that, but that the governor has said that he's that he's highly recommending that people wear masks, but that whole requirement in the classroom is still a little bit ambiguous as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think that could be another question, thank you for bringing that up, another question for Superintendent Hoffman tomorrow of, can you clarify that mask requirement, or basically the statement on masks in that executive order? Because it did say, wanting students and staff to wear a mask, but is that a requirement? Is that a recommendation? I think there's room for both of us to get some more answers on that for sure.
Great.
All right. Yeah, well, thank you all so much again for joining us this morning. I'm just loving a lot of these comments, and just that we're having this conversation, because I think it's so important right now with so much going on. Don't forget abc15.com/schools. We are tracking your district reopening plans. We're keeping up the best we can because we know they are changing very quickly. So make sure you go there. There's a searchable map. You can find your district, get a better idea of their plans to reopen. And Carla and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. As always, there will be plenty to talk about in the world of education. So thanks so much for joining us, guys. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you for being here.